of life, family, entrepreneurship, personal development, tech, and marketing using real, raw, and 100% no bullshit proven tactics. My name is Ivan Tamokov, and I'm your host. And ladies and gentlemen, on today's episode, I have a very special guest that we're going to get down real, raw, and dirty and talk about some real shit. I have with me Mr. Andrew Peck. Andrew, how's it going, man?
Hey, it's going well. I don't know about the mister, though. You're making me sound old.
Andrew Peck. So, Andrew, I'm really excited to have you on, man. And before we jump into chatting more about your story and how you got to what you're doing today, I just want to give a brief intro to listeners and viewers so they know the caliber of person that you are and what you've accomplished. So, Andrew is an internationally recognized authority on innovation, design, thinking, and entrepreneurship for startup to mature companies. Andrew has helped organizations such as Bayer, BNP Paribas, Citigroup, Pfizer, and Steelcase become more innovative. Andrew has been invited to speak worldwide, and his views on innovative leaders, change management, and design thinking have been featured on ABC, NBC, CBS, Fox, the New York Times, Investor Business Daily, and Chicago Tribune. Man, like that is like a wealth of accomplishments. First of all, congratulations on all of this, man. I mean, I think if there's one thing that we as men, when we reflect back on our lives, we look at what the fuck did I accomplish, really?
Yeah.
So these are some pretty awesome accomplishments. But before we dive into that and talk about the business side, let's start with your story. Tell us in a few minutes, your background, where you've been, what you've seen. I want people to get to know you more on a personal level.
Yeah, it's so interesting to hear when somebody else like yourself, sort of details my biographical sketch.
Yeah.
I'm like, and yet that is only partial description of the true me, right? The story.
Yeah.
But I had this sense always when I was growing up as a young man that, I knew I was going to do something special. I loved the friends that I grew up with, hung out and, did, at school and, the playground and sports and all those sort of things. But I always knew that there's something waiting for me that I knew that I had to go out and grab as far as accomplishment in terms of the work that I do. We chatted a little bit before.
Yeah.
I'm Eastern European. My family's from Hungary. They're immigrants. I grew up in Cleveland, Ohio, very industrial. Like there was, I think at one point, more Hungarians in Cleveland, Ohio than any other city than Budapest. So it was like a little, as they say, Magyar, Hungarian nation.
Mm-hmm.
And so, I had that always sense of striving and achievement. So I started really early on working. Like I was 13 years old. My mom said, summer job, you got to get a job. You got to learn the value of work, which now sounds a little like indentured servitude. Kids today, I don't know if is always as ambitious or pushed that way by their parents, but my parents believed in a strong work ethic. So I early on started to work. I was a caddy at a golf course, so, there was work, I was earning money, which was superb. But what I learned early on, it wasn't just the business currency, the knowledge of the job that I mastered, but it was the relationships. Even learning how to play golf, for example, and working and interacting with people who are way above my pay grade and education and status in life at the time. My parents, we began from humble beginnings.
Mm-hmm.
And so that really taught me early on the value of connecting with people early on. And I've applied that sort of ethos ever since. So when I graduated from college, I went working for a large oil company. My friends thought I sold out to a big oil company. Worked in marketing, worked in human resources, had a nice set of experiences. And I thought, all right, this is pretty good. I'm making good money. I had a really nice car, all those things that you would expect with that achievement. But I wasn't satisfied. I felt like, all right, having a good job is nice. Thinking about getting married someday and having a family, all of which was sort of, again, maybe my conditioned response on how you live your life. But I felt this burning desire to do more. And so
Yeah.
even during the time when I was working full time early on, I had side entrepreneurial things going on, businesses, and I was starting to do some already freelance kind of consulting. So I ended up in professional services, worked with a large firm called Accenture. That's on my resume.
Hmm.
And wow, did that my world explode, because not only was I doing work, I was traveling all over the world, working with some of the most senior companies and leaders. It was really heady stuff. It was
Yeah.
just amazing. Sometimes those pinch me moments, right?
Right.
And then that just gave me the foundation, and my world went from my parents were educated and hardworking, but I think when I grew up out of my system in Cleveland, Ohio, which is a great place to grow up, I started to see the world in different ways when I started to travel, which was totally amazing, and enriched my life, and then gave me the sort of confidence to want to do more, to help people be
Yeah.
more innovative, creative, and so forth and so on. So, I mean, I could go on the backstory,
Yeah. Yeah.
dig and zag wherever you like, just dive in there with me.
Sure. Sure. It's really interesting. You said something in the beginning. I don't know if it was if it has something to do, but maybe it does has something to do with being an immigrant also, and kind of having sort of that different mentality, because I think us immigrants are really hungry and very driven. It's kind of almost like ingrained in our DNA, I think. And what you
Mm.
were saying earlier on is just that, when you were growing up and when you were a kid, you sort of had this intuition that you were destined for something greater. Like you knew it inside yourself, like you knew you wanted to do something, but you weren't sure how to attain it. And obviously, when you're really young, like you just don't have any direction, right? Like you don't know how to go about something. So it's really interesting that at a very young age, you actually had that intuition. And the reason I'm bringing this up is because I recently talked about how intuition creates direction, and how so many people don't actually listen to their intuition. Like they almost have like that gut feeling, or maybe that inner voice that says, how about you try this, or try that. But they self-doubt themselves. So it's interesting you had that intuition. And then another thing that you mentioned that's, really, really key also, and I'm a big fan of this, is people. You talked about the ethos. Because I think that in business specifically, I mean, we do business with people. We don't do business with companies. So being able to connect with other people, knowing how to connect with other people, on an emotional level is so important. And so when you said that you got that job and you were traveling around the world and you were talking to all these leaders, right? It kind of gave you a firsthand experience of how people think and act. And suddenly you're like, wait, you're not so different, and you get to learn all this different perspective. The question I have for you is, so when you were traveling and we were meeting all these like senior management people, right, what were some things that kind of stood out to you, because you were observing, right? Like you were absorbing all the experience, the people, the conversations. Were there certain things like earlier on that you started to pick up on, like constants that really stood out to you?
Yeah, those are great questions, Ivan. By the way, I did listen to your podcast on intuition. I
Yeah.
loved it because you nailed it. It's
Yep.
that feeling that I had. I didn't know what the end result or the
Mhm.
next step necessarily, but I had that sensation. And thank you for validating, because I did
Yeah.
trust it. Now, sometimes years later, when you had some setbacks, I
Yeah.
started to doubt it.
Yeah.
But when I started working with large corporations, and I'll give you an example of this early on. When I started working with some senior leaders, even just back a few years ago when I worked with BNP Paribas in France,
Yeah.
here I was, couldn't speak the language. I knew a little French, but not enough to be fluent in it. And fortunately, they were all fluent in English, so I could do this meeting. I was with the top 500 leaders all over the world. I mean, it's pretty intense,
Yeah.
pretty intimidating. But I was working with some of the senior executives, and what just was so impressive is their presence in the moment, that they could really sort of quiet the room, really listen, really command the group,
Yeah.
speak with articulate words, and I thought, wow, that is an amazing sense of quality of leadership, and I've always been interested in how other people can be influential.
Yeah.
And so it not only helped me do the work that I do with groups. So I've done a lot of facilitation with large groups, presenting, that I can command a room and influence people. But learning some of the, the trade craft, if you will, their secret
Yeah.
sauce on how
Yeah.
they do that, how they ask questions, how they listen, how they respond, how they use humor, for example.
Yeah.
To some of the early things that I saw, those subtle, softer things, wasn't always what people knew. I've met a lot of bright people who couldn't communicate to a doorknob. They were thick in terms of their interpersonal skills, even though they were incredibly intelligent. And that's not an insult on their intelligence. It just didn't have that sort of emotional sort of currency that I thought was essential to building really effective relationships.
So, question for you, actually, because I'm curious knowing this, and this is, I think, mainly for a personal reference. So, when you were surrounded in that experience that you had, that you just said, you were surrounded with all these like top leaders. Did you feel intimidated in a way?
Oh yeah, I mean, there was this moment. And maybe it's this Eastern European guilty sort of, like, how the hell did this little skinny little boy from Cleveland, Ohio, ethnic boy, get to this moment in time? I remember before I was going to be introduced to this group, my heart was about to leap right out of my chest.
Yeah.
And mind you, I had plenty of experience being in front of lots of different groups, but there's something about that, being in a foreign country, not speaking the language, around these people, knowing that I had to operate a little bit differently. I had to show a sort of a different nuanced approach to how, because sometimes I'm very animated, I do some crazy stuff and use colorful language to engage people, but I knew that wasn't going to necessarily fly in this audience, particularly since English wasn't their first language. So the moments up to that point where I was introduced, it was like, whew, heady, right? Almost like, if you ever saw the movie, oh gosh, it was the Turkish prison movie, wherever that, I forget the name of the actor, and now I'm going to forget about it. But
it's all right.
Yeah, drawing a blank, but there was a scene where, he's doing something illegal. He's trying to get cocaine out of Turkey, and his heart is just pounding. The whole scene of that movie is the adrenaline is so high that he's just knows that, oh my God, this is an intense moment. Well, I felt like that. Of course, not smuggling cocaine or something like that, but it had that same sensation.
The reason I actually asked that question is because, it's not just for me. I think it's for listeners and viewers too, is that I think at least once in our lives, it's probably more than once at least, we fall into these situations where I know I have feeling intimidated, like we don't belong there. Like, it's like you said, you had that adrenaline, your heart was about to explode. And you're like, there's so much probably going through your mind, or was going through your mind, thinking like, how the fuck did I get in here? Like, am I supposed to be here? Like, what if I say the wrong thing? Right? Like, you've got all this self-doubt, right? And the reason I'm bringing this up is because what most people don't understand is that you were meant to be there. Like, you were supposed to be there. You were supposed to be there. You got there for a reason. You did something happened. Forces of nature, God, you were meant to be there. And I think the reason I'm talking about this and why I asked the question is because I think commonly, especially entrepreneurs, feel intimidated. In fact, 99% of entrepreneurs quit because, they come across a hurdle and they say, well, this is too tough. I'm going to throw in the towel. Well, duh. If it was easy, everybody would be doing it. That's why I personally am a fan of the 1% club, because to be in the 1% club takes everything that the other 99% are unwilling to do. Everything. So
Sure.
go ahead.
Yeah, no, I love that. There's a certain sense of displaced feeling, and that, to go back to that moment, that's
Yeah.
exactly how I felt. It was like I was having this out of body experience. And again, this is based on many years of experience. So the point is you start to really put yourself out there. The moment that you feel vulnerable or you really take some risk, and challenge yourself, you suddenly realize, all right, I'm in it. I'm in this game, and so now how am I going to seize that moment?
Yeah.
Because it only gets more intense thereafter. But I have to say that I've been always attracted to that. I have a zest for like challenging myself even more so, like
Yeah.
what's next. And that was something new at the time that I enjoyed, and to then look back on it and say, wow, what an incredible experience that was, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
So
No,
uh,
that's just it. I mean, the reason like I said, I also to elaborate on the question that I asked is because, I think there's so much. I mean, if I personally reflect on the last 20 plus years, it's like, there's so much, like we talked about intuition, right? In the beginning, and then earlier on that you knew you were destined. I think a lot of people, probably know at an early age that they were destined for something, or kind of have this gut feeling that tells them that, you know what, like I'm going to do something later on in my life. I don't know what it is, but it's just there, right? Because let's just face it, like as human beings, we're not that blend. We have goals, we have dreams. I think now that I look back to my childhood, I probably had so many goals and dreams that like I just lost sight of a lot of those, honestly, because I just thought that it was impossible. And being a father now and a husband, it's like, my son's 5 years old and my daughter's going to be 3. And we were talking about education before we had record, but I'm like, you know what? If my son decides not to go to college and he's really dead set on something that he wants to do, I mean, he's good at sports, he's very intelligent, he loves playing games, like let him pursue that. When I was a kid, I was told that follow the yellow brick road because you're an Eastern
yeah,
European, and that's what I had ingrained in my head. So, like, guess what? When I dropped out of college, that was a huge fucking disappointment because, I'm the son of a first gen immigrants, and they're like, they had these high hopes and dreams and expectations that I was going to be the first to graduate college in the United States of America, and sort of forge this flag in the family tree and make my milestone. It's like, no, I mean, you walk the path that you create for yourself, and no, I'm a firm believer of that. So I want to go back to, there's a few things I still want to touch upon because you're 30 years now into advising top leaders and companies and empowering other entrepreneurs and change makers to be more effective. But here's the question I want to know is, how did you even get the opportunity? Because I think a lot of entrepreneurs wonder about this, right? Like the $1 million opportunity. How did you even get the opportunity to be surrounded with all these leaders? Because you're this kid from Cleveland, Ohio.
right. Well, it's right. And if you notice in my sort of, I was just riffing with you.
Yeah.
My mind, the mental model was, all right, let's give Ivan and your audience a nice linear sort of progression to my
Yeah.
career. But in reality, it's serendipity. Some things just sort of emerged that because I took the initiative, right?
Yeah.
So, chronologically speaking, I was educated. I had a undergraduate degree in political science, so it was more. And thank God I wasn't choose to be a lawyer or anything like that. That wouldn't have fit my personality. But I had early on an internship with this oil company. It was, BP. And that gave me the foundation. And I was surrounded by some really smart, educated people who kind of took me under the wing. So mentorship was really key. during
Yeah.
the early days, so that I was fortunate in that regard. And then I remember too, there was a job that I was really not qualified for. I just always had this nature. I said, I know I can do this job. I can do
Yeah.
it. And I hounded the hiring manager, and so that was just yet another stepping stone. And then over time, the combination of just my own chutzpah and initiative combined with some other people who gave me some coaching.
Yeah.
And Ivan, I wouldn't be honest with you if I didn't say in setbacks and failures. There are jobs that
Yeah.
I got fired at, or I fired them.
Yeah.
Right? It was like, this is BS. This is not for me.
Yeah.
I had these sort of existential moments again, and I realized, all right, as I did reflection, what is that intuition? What is the voice inside?
Yeah.
How do I follow my heart? And so because of that, I started to experience greater, bigger, like I said, world of working with multiple different people, and some pretty amazing, like I said, individuals.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
that kind of sums it up.
Well, there's a couple things that you said that I want to highlight on. You said serendipity. I think a lot of people wonder, like, and this is a misconception that I had, is where I'm going with this, is when I was younger, I thought that these fucking millionaires and billionaires, right, had it served on a silver platter, right? Like someone said, you're going to wake up today and have $1 million in your bank account, right? Or you're going to be the most influential person in the world, right? And that was so far from the truth, honestly. And when I really got to know it over the years, is I realized that these were very hardworking people, and they were just, it's who is very important, and what is also very important.
Yes.
The serendipity plays in that part. So, like, the reason I asked the question of, like, how did you get this opportunity? Because that's what most people wonder, is like, how does this kid from Cleveland, Ohio get to be in a room of some of the most influential leaders around the world, right? Because why not them? Why you? People always compare, right? That's what they do, because especially people who aspire to be greater, and maybe they're just not where they want to be, right? They start to compare and say, well, why him and not me? You see what I'm saying?
Yeah. Well, Ivan, I would say first and foremost, it was belief in myself. I mean, even in my darkest days, if you will, I still had this internal burning flame. I believed in myself. I knew that I was capable, and there was something else there waiting for me. And I never gave up. I still, to this day, never give up. I'm always yearning to do more, learn more, be more, better, all those sorts of aspects. So it's that belief. But we talked about this a little bit earlier, pre-record. There's so many people that you encounter in life and work who will tell you, oh, you can't do that. Why would you do that? Oh, only these people do that. There's a lot of doubt, right?
Yeah.
One of my favorite all-time sayings is by Theodore Geisel, also known as Dr. Seuss. Those who mind don't matter. Those who matter don't mind.
That's a very wise quote. And you said most, actually majority of society, because I got into a deep conversation not too long ago about how in human nature we're wired for survival, which is kind of a dual-edged sword in a sense, right? That it's good because we're hunters in an essence, but we fear that because of the uncertainty, and we choose comfort, which is the other side of the sword. So, like what you were saying is, like, most people, like, nah, like that's not worth it. Like look for instant gratification almost, and say, well, what am I gonna get out of this? It's like you're putting the cart before the horse. Like, you haven't even done shit before you're trying to find an expect, and that's majority of society. Actually, I mean, if you look at yourself, your career, right? The reason you are where you are in your stage in your life, family, business, is because you were a risk taker, because you sacrificed, because you were a disruptor, because you innovated. And I could depict that from everything that you've said so far on this episode, because I'm very much that way. And I think that's in part also with our culture as well. Because there was something I read years ago, I think it was a Forbes article that really stuck out to me. 40% of America's fortune companies are built by immigrants or children of immigrants. Google being one of them, right?
Yeah.
And so, like, suddenly it's like, wait, there's a common denominator here, right? And then
Yeah.
when I researched it more, it's like, as immigrants, we risk more for we play the long game. We disrupt, we take chances when others try to play it safe, right? So I want to segue into a key area that I want to talk about and would love to hear your thoughts about. So one of the specific things that's sort of, in the epicenter of everything that you do is you go beyond advice and expertise and emphasize the importance of building trusted relationships with clients and colleagues. Let's talk about that, and can you maybe extrapolate that a little bit more and talk about the nuance of that?
Yeah. So my area of expertise, subject wise, is in the area of creativity, innovation, business innovation, organizational innovation.
Mm-hmm.
And we could, spend hours just talking about that, but that's my trade craft. That's what I know. So anytime you are, as an entrepreneur or consultant or advisor or somebody corporation trying to affect change,
Yeah.
there's something that you're providing expertise, knowledge. That's business currency. That's a sort of the fundamentals, right? And I teach a lot of individuals and other, now I'm known as the consultant. So I teach a lot of those fundamentals. But the game changer is the social currency. Your ability to work with diverse people, empathize with them, relate to them, connect with them. So one of the things I've been very blessed with, again, through a lot of my initiatives and also through opportunities and mentors who've supported me in years past, is I've worked the gamut, the range from somebody on the frontline factory worker and learning how to relate to somebody there and support them in their change journey, if you will, to the CEO of a large, multi-billion-dollar corporation. They're the constant, they're both human. Constant, they have certain characteristics that are similar, and yet their view of the world, their set of experiences different. And so as a advisor, entrepreneur, you have to learn how to deal with those two individuals and everything in between.
Yeah.
And that to me is social currency, is the ability to influence, listen, communicate, engage. Those are the kind of qualities that through experiences that I've developed and then advising others to sort of master as well, is what helped them succeed enormously in their career or their business.
So one thing that you said, and I'd love to hear more about this, you said social currency, listening and responding. And so as you work with, a lot of different, C-suite, upper management individuals, is that what's really interesting is that you've obviously come into play with those opportunities because there was a need there, right? To help these people develop their social currency, right? So when we're talking about social currency, are you just talking about like people figuring out how to deal with other people? Are you talking about social currency in an essence of, well, social media also, which in essence is kind of correlated to that? Can you elaborate more about that?
Yeah, no, that's a great question, Ivan. It also, it's not just your ability to relate to people. That's essential. I mean, those are the raw sort of essentials to success. But it is also using the different, both soft and hard sort of technologies to define your message, your character, your branding. So again, let's use the B&P story. This is, you know, every time I walked into these executives' office, imagine I'm going to create the scene here. Paris, France, very aristocratic, very
Yeah,
sophisticated cafes, croissants, you name it, kind of thing. And you walk in, it's like walking into the court of Versailles, you know,
yeah,
hermetically sealed offices, you know, they're 1,000 years old, thick carpeting, all this kind of stuff. And where's this Cleveland, Ohio guy show up with, you know, very nice designer jeans, Barbados jacket, you know,
nice.
t-shirt. You got to be ballsy, you know, to do
Yeah,
that. But that's my brand. That's what they
yep,
hired because they knew they needed to think differently.
yep,
And I was confident, and it never was an issue. They didn't say, "Oh, what is this guy?"
yep,
Like he was just rolled off on the streets of Paris into our corridors. How did we get this guy in here? Not at all, because how I
yeah,
conducted myself on a human level, right? So using
yep.
those kinds of tools has become my brand, which is obviously using social media now. That's my whole program is unplugged, but in a sophisticated
Yeah.
fashion.
Yeah. It's really interesting that you said this Cleveland, Ohio kid shows up, with the jeans, designer jeans. And what's really funny is I can relate to that. And I should struggle with it for years because when I started out, with my career, is just that I always thought, okay, be suited up, right? Like that's what they wanted. And I was like, honestly, if I look back at that, I'm like, fuck that. Give me my white t-shirt and my shorts or jeans. That's
Right.
me. You don't like it? Fuck off, honestly. And I was so worried about, what people thought at the time. I was so
Yeah.
worried about. So it's real interesting you said, like, that's my brand. That's what they bought. And I'm a huge fan of that more than ever. I'm like, white t shirt, as you see, probably wearing a hat. And I got shorts that you can't see below the torso, or jeans, depending on where I'm going, and probably flip flops. What most people don't understand in business and entrepreneurs is that don't judge a book by its cover
Yep.
because it's this that matters, right? It's
Yeah.
what you bring to the
Yeah.
table. So as you showed up in the mecca of culture in the world, the croissants and these old ass buildings that 15th, 16th century, or even older than that
Yeah.
you're never going to see in the United States because the history just isn't there, right?
Right.
Most people are like, what the hell is this dude doing here, right?
Yeah.
So it's really fascinating, though, and I think this is key for listeners and viewers to understand that it doesn't matter what you look like. It doesn't matter how you dress. Okay, some people say, "Well, dress to impress." I think in certain capacities, maybe, but it's what you
Sure.
bring to the table, right?
Sure. It's forever showing respect. It's not like you're not disregarding the sort of environment in which you're in. I was
Yeah,
always attuned to that. But I'll give you again, staying with that example. I knew when I sold that engagement, and this was a multi-million dollar engagement, and I knew
yeah,
precisely the moment that it was because of me and how I showed up. My colleagues, I had a team of other people. They went through their PowerPoint deck
yeah,
ad nauseum, ad nauseum. You could see the yawns. You could see, all right, typical consultants, right? And I just spoke up. I said, listen,
yeah,
you're facing a, may I say, deliciously complex challenge here. You're trying to integrate all these cultures, these
yeah,
businesses. You're
yeah,
trying to, how do you rally? I spoke to their emotions and their feelings about the circumstance, and you could see the shift in energy.
yeah,
That's how I sold that engagement,
yeah.
not the fancy diagrams and plans and Excel spreadsheets and results that we're going to achieve. That's table stakes.
Yeah.
It's your ability to connect with that human being in that particular circumstances is what is the game changer.
Yeah, I think overthinking it, honestly. I think, a lot of companies and entrepreneurs, I've seen this, and I'm sure you have, through your vast experiences, is that I think too many leaders and executives specifically are always like so over the top on everything. Like they think that they need to impress, they shoot to impress, they try to go over the top, and they forget that, what, simplicity is key. It's like, so one of the things that both of us are fans of is ethos, right? When you
Mhm.
really harness in on ethos, it's like you're never going to go wrong, because business is about doing, other people solving problems, or you solving problems for other people. So it's people connecting. And I think, especially over the last 5 years and even last year with COVID, I mean, I think COVID was very challenging, but it was a fucking blessing for a lot of businesses, because they were forced to innovate. They were forced to pivot because they had no choice. And suddenly they realized that, oh fuck, we haven't been doing this in a while. No wonder our business sucks. And then we saw that with the retail space. We saw that with malls around the United States, because malls were catering to a target audience the way they have been for 50 years.
Yeah.
People don't
You're
want to
right.
fucking, I mean, why would I drag my ass to the mall when I can sit on the couch, hit a button, and Amazon delivers within the hour or the next day? Like, is it the experience? So I think modern business, and this is where I think you've had an immense amount of success, is that you understand what modern business is about, and you help these leaders understand, teach them how to cater to the people that they're trying to serve, the people and companies, right?
Yeah. Bingo. I mean, again, is to evolve your thinking in those kinds of
Mm-hmm.
situations. Modern business requires you to my whole business. I own a business that's called Disrupt by Design.
Yeah.
If you're not the disruptor, you will be disrupted. And this is a
Right.
perfect example of that. I wanted
Right.
to just add one thing to the previous story that I said is what I want your audience to understand is the mastery of that sort of emotional intelligence, if you will, has to be authentic by all means. Because I've seen it in
Yeah.
reverse, where I've seen people who are too slick, too wooden. They come into your office and say, "Oh, I see you go skiing in is that Colorado?" It's like so obvious that they just got out of a training course, and they
Yeah.
said, "Be sure to pay attention to what's on their credenza," kind of thing.
Yeah.
Yeah, of course, but it has to be natural. It has to
Yeah.
be authentic. Otherwise, people are going to see through that bullshit all the time. Uh,
What's really interesting that you said is, I mean, there's so many things you mentioned in this episode, man, that I'm like, oh yeah, been there, done that, failed, got the t-shirt, so to speak, right?
right.
And this podcast including, because this podcast has ran for 6 years. The first 2 years, it was a marketing podcast. And I was like, well, fuck, first of all, most people can Google a lot of this shit. Right. So secondly, like, I'm not bringing anything authentic. Not to mention is I'm not being my true self.
Yeah.
And when RAS came about, which RAS stands for raw as shit, which of course Apple and the other podcasting platforms were like, you can't say shit. So okay, abbreviate it, right? It's like, what the fuck? It's 2021. Are you like Joe Rogan gets $200 million deal on Spotify and Apple gets their butts hurt over using the word shit? It's like, are you fucking kidding me? So, but as it pivoted, it had to pivot and change, because the RAS project is not for everybody. It's for somebody, that wants to hear what you have to say, Andrew, because your message, your value, your appearance, your persona will impact the life of one person. That's all I give a fuck about, honestly. Because I think, especially and this in business and
Yeah.
entrepreneurship, is too many try to impact the lives of many, but they can't even impact the life of one. Right?
Yeah.
Trying to appeal to the masses, but you can't even appeal to one person. Like, how are you going to change the world and create impact? Which impact is one of the core values of my business. Like, somebody want to create impact and change, but they can even do it on an individual level. That's why I'm such a huge fan of everything that you said. And I love how going beyond advice and expertise and enforcing the importance of building trusted relationships. Keyword trusted. There was something I actually heard from a big influencer, someone that spent like 60 million on influencers and has done a bunch of stuff, but he said, when it comes to business, I think too many entrepreneurs and companies say, I want 200 clients or 2,000 clients or 20,000 clients, right? They're looking at a quantity. They're not looking at Well, how about if you had 20 whale clients or even 10? Because you're not in the business of selling a price tag. You're in the business of selling value, right? Because that's what you
Yeah.
do, Andrew.
Yeah, you nailed it. It's absolutely true. I think we do get caught up in, and you're going to be chasing it.
Yeah.
And talk about t-shirt. I've worn that t-shirt many times over. I've worked for organizations too that you get a t-shirt every time you try to hit that
Yeah.
metric, and that yet you never seem to ever succeed with that kind of mindset.
Yeah.
Better to
Yeah.
have really quality impact at one or two, and strengthen those relationships, because then
Mm-hmm.
if it makes sense and you've got a business model that you can construct that way, then of course you can scale it, right?
Yeah.
Then you can get the volume, if you will, so to speak.
Yeah. Well, Andrew, I know we could probably chat indefinitely because there's so much here that's relatable to a lot of things that you've done and a lot of things that I personally believe in, at a heart level specifically, which correlates to business. But before we wrap up the episode, can you throw out some social handles, websites? How can people
Sure.
reach you and connect you?
Yeah, so one of the best ways to get more information about my business and my mission, which is to empower the next generation of entrepreneurs and innovators, is consultingunplugged.com. So consultingunplugged.com, or you can find me on LinkedIn. I'm on pretty active. I'm also on Facebook and Instagram, but LinkedIn
Yeah.
is the best. Andrew Pek, Pek. That's a Hungarian name. And so you can find me there. Happy to accept people's invitation and support them in their journey.
Awesome, Andrew. I want to thank you so much, man. This was a powerhouse of an episode, and I absolutely 100% enjoyed every bit of it.
Well, likewise, it's been a pleasure.